serving in the U.S. Senate and the first openly LGBTQ plus person to represent California in the upper chamber. Joel Payne and Maura Gillespie join us now. Joel is a CBS News political contributor and the chief communications officer for Move On. And Maura is the founder of Bluestack Strategies and the former advisor to Speaker John Boehner and former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Joel, I want to start with you, but first let's take a listen to why Governor Newsom says he chose Butler.
Everything that she's been advocating for in the last few years meet this moment as it relates to rights regressions, issues of civil rights and issues of LGBTQ rights, women and girls, issues related to voting rights. She's been on the front end of all of these things.
So when you heard his choice, were you surprised or did this make sense?
I think certainly this was a welcome surprise by many folks within the kind of Democratic progressive ecosystem. Ms. Butler is very well respected. As you mentioned, she's the president of Emily's List. She's a former close advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. And she's a really experienced political organizer in the state of California. She's a known entity. She does kind of check the boxes that Governor Newsom wanted to with finding an African-American woman, a woman of color. Also, without dipping his toe or kind of putting his thumb on the scale in the ongoing Senate primary where you have Barbara Lee, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter all competing. So this kind of allows him to do all those things at once. And I can tell you that one other thing that's really important to consider here is that this is a person who is very well regarded on the issue of abortion, obviously representing a group like Emily's List. So elevating that issue nationally is also something that checks a box for Governor Newsom as well.
And Maura, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about that issue of abortion. If you think this, speaks to what Democrats might be trying to do to really try to showcase that for 2024, and if you think it will be as big of an issue as it was in the midterms when we saw it really did play a role in voters' choices.
It's going to continue to be an issue. Obviously, I think the economy and then safety and security are going to be the number 1 and 2 issues that voters are going to be focused on. But right behind it is going to be abortion. And the Republican Party has long had problems in really expressing a standpoint that can get them through a general election. And we've seen that obviously in the midterms most recently, but there are a lot of people in the party that maybe aren't super outspoken about it, but care deeply about this issue. And the super restrictive stances that most Republicans take is not going to get them there and is not going to be in line with what the Republican Party is. As a country, as society, we are moving beyond the super restrictive stances. And I think I've long held this view about being conservative. To me, a conservative is a smaller, more accountable government. And nothing says big government like telling half the population they don't get to have medical freedom. And so I think Republicans can message this differently and really focus on the broader conversation of childcare, of other issues for women's health. So yes, I definitely think that Governor Newsom is obviously trying to hone in on this and by highlighting it in this way. But Republicans will have to push back on that for sure.
But Joel, Butler doesn't live in California right now. She lives not far from here in Maryland. And I know that she's received some criticism for that. Is that going to be a hindrance as she, starts to serve the state of California?
Not for me. She's a fellow Marylander. Well. I am too. No, I'm just teasing. Look, I'm certain that's an unfortunate quirk of this, although I will say because she has such a deep, well-respected history in the state. This is somebody who I think led the fight for $15 minimum wage in the state of California. She's a very well-known entity. I don't get the sense there will be any blowback locally, and I think nationally most Democrats feel really good about the decision that Governor Newsom made there.
Republicans are going to hit on it, and we both know that. We all know that. Republicans are going to continue. You're seeing it all over X or Twitter. It's all over right now, them talking about that she's from Maryland. Maryland's got their 3rd senator. Congratulations. And so I think that question is going to continue to come up is this a position to make history with this nomination, or are you trying to put the best person in the position to do the job? And Governor Newsom is going to be asked that question, I think, time and time again.
I'd point out also, you got Mitt Romney, who represents Utah, who was the governor of Massachusetts before. You've had Hillary Clinton represent New York in the Senate very well from Illinois. So it's not uncommon to have these types of cross-state representations as well.
Point taken. It's not new or unprecedented. I want to turn to the 2024 presidential election because recently President Biden said he did not support a no-labels candidate, and I want to quickly listen to what he had to say.
Your former Senate colleague, Joe Lieberman, says he is upholding democracy by working with an organization called No Labels to pursue a potential third-party candidacy. Is he?
Well, he has a democratic right to do it. There's no reason not to do that. Now, it's going to help the other guy, and he knows. So that's a political decision he's making that I obviously think is a mistake.
So aside from how realistic it is, I mean, I want to ask you if you think it's too late. Is it too late to see a third-party candidate, or is it a possibility at this point?
Well, I think it's certainly a possibility. And look, as the president said, there's nothing to stop No Labels from getting on the ballot. I represent Move On. Move On is very opposed to the No Labels bid, just for full disclosure. I think I would point out is, the president talked about Joe Lieberman there. You can go back 20 years to Joe Lieberman, who was on the Gore-Lieberman ticket, where Ralph Nader swung the election to George W. Bush. And I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of Democrats reminding Joe Lieberman and his supporters at No Labels of that.
And Maura, do you agree with the president that it could help the GOP?
It's interesting because you have the No Labels talking about a third party, but then you also now have RFK Jr. also exploring a third party option. So what does that create? And I think it could be damaging to both sides, truly. And we don't know where we're going to be at 2024. We don't necessarily even know our candidates. Yes, President Biden has said he's running, but some people think that Governor Newsom is actually setting himself up to run, and that President Biden will step down and say that he's not actually running for re-election. So there's a lot that could still be uncovered as we get through. So a third party, I mean, it could have its own primary issue between RFK Jr. and the No Labels nominee. So
well, we do know that we will see you guys both back here because there's a lot to talk about. So Maura Gillespie and Joel Payne, thank you so much.